Hey there, Lauren Wood here. Thanks so much for joining us for this next edition of Know to Grow. You're used to seeing me on 2 News Today, but when I'm not here at the station, one of my favorite things to do is spend time in the garden with my kids or on our family farm. So I thought it would be a really great idea to talk with some of our local extension educators about the topics that are important to farmers, gardeners, anybody involved in agriculture around the Miami Valley. And that is what we are doing on Know to Grow. And today we are joined by Amanda Bennett. She is the extension educator from Miami County. And she is going to talk to us a little bit, first of all, about how you wound up at Extension, how you wound up being an extension educator. You tell me this was really a dream job for you.
It was a dream job for me. I'm from the Miami Valley. I grew up on a grain farm outside of Troy, Ohio, and went to Ohio State. Thought I was going to study Spanish and become a Spanish teacher, and realized there's all these people out there that don't know about agriculture. I got asked a lot of funny questions. I thought they were funny. When I went to a big city like Columbus and realized that, hey, there might be something here. I'm a little bit more interested in where I came from and interested in teaching people about agriculture and kind of really building ag literacy. I realized that really is something that is lacking, and it leads to a lot of what I'll kind of consider problems in our food industry, particularly. So,
absolutely. What did your parents think when you told them that you were kind of changing courses? You said it was a family grain farm.
Yeah, my dad is a first generation farmer and full time farmer. What did they think? They are super supportive of me. So I think I probably could have said I was going to become an astronaut and they would have been like, okay, so they were very supportive of me.
Very cool. Well, we are going to talk about some issues that, affect a lot of people in the Miami Valley, not just niche things. I know one of the first things that you had mentioned that we'd like to talk about today are some of these emerging tick species. I know we've talked to doctors this year who have said this is really the first time that we're seeing Lyme in the Miami Valley, at least on this scale. And you said there are several species that are of concern. So tell me a little bit about that.
There are. A couple decades ago, we only had a couple ticks that were of medical importance to humans, but it has really become more like now there are like 6 species that are problematic. And there are a lot of myths surrounding ticks as well. Particularly about where they live and when they're active. People only think about them in the spring or the summertime, but really there's this huge kind of resurgence of them in their life cycle in December. We see hunters that will go out and hunt that week after Christmas and come out of the woods with multiple ticks on them. So they're really out there all year long. They live for like 1 or 2, maybe even up to 3 years. When you think about that, it makes sense that they're active all the time.
What are these new species and what do we need to be worried about as far as the diseases that they carry?
I think the new species, there are some Lone Star ticks coming in, Gulf Coast ticks, Asian longhorn ticks. So some of those are, not native, and some of those are coming from, kind of migrating from the south. So those are some species to kind of be aware of. We do have instances of all 3 of those being in the Miami Valley area. So it's important to kind of be aware of those. The diseases, you mentioned Lyme disease. Yes, that is one that these species can carry. There's also a more scary one, I suppose, that makes you allergic to red meat.
Alpha-gal, right?
Yes, alpha-gal.
That is horrifying.
Yes, to most people.
Those are the Lone Star ticks that carry that. Is that right?
Yes, they can be a carrier.
So how do you know if you need to get tested for these diseases? I mean, is every tick bite worth testing? What do you need to do?
I think what we recommend is that if you are bitten, that you remove it correctly with a pair of tweezers, or they even make special instruments that you can use, kind of like, looks like a little spoon. But it's important not to just squeeze it with your finger and rip it out. Important to get the whole thing out of your skin. But then we recommend saving it, labeling it with like a date, and maybe putting it in the freezer or some way to preserve it. That way, if
Okay.
you do have a reaction afterwards, it could be tested.
What are some of the symptoms that you need to look for Lyme disease, for one? I know there's different symptoms for different diseases. I've always heard of the bullseye rash with Lyme, but that's not always present, right?
It isn't, and I'm not a medical expert, but certainly if you are noticing some unusual symptoms and you know you've been bitten by a tick, it might be worth looking into.
What are some things we can do to protect ourselves?
Protecting ourselves, really know where they live. They don't just live in the woods. They live in tall grass. That means in a ditch, anywhere there is some tall grass. And that could be your backyard, very much so. Also be aware that your pets break a biosecurity. If you are, having them in and out of the house, make sure they're being treated, that you're looking for them, or looking for ticks, on their bodies and in the under their collars and ears and things like that. So you really want to protect yourself in that way. And just wearing light colored clothing when you are going to be going out. It's easier to see them. It's not that they're attracted to light colors. It's just easier to see them wearing long pants and sleeves when you're out in areas where you might come in contact with ticks. But also you can treat your clothing with permethrin, an insect repellent that's not for your skin, it's for your clothing. So that could be an option if you have some dedicated clothing that you're going to be wearing when you're doing a particular activity outside. That might be something to consider. And then, of course, there are the sprays that you could put on your body to kind of protect yourself from them as well.
You talked about saving the ticks. If you do wind up ill and you need to get it tested, can you do that through Extension? Where do you send them off to be tested if you have symptoms?
Yeah, great question. There is a site, buckeyetickTest.osu.edu. That is our clinic that we do test ticks, and you get a report back that says, what they've been tested for, positive, not detected, et cetera, those sorts of things. You send the tick in with some potentially pictures and some information and get that report back. So that is buckeyetickTest.osu.edu.
Okay, that's good. We'll definitely link that on our website. And just because you've been bitten by a tick that may have this disease doesn't necessarily mean you've gotten the disease yourself, right? It takes time for transmission. How does that all work?
That's right. There are a lot of variables. Some of the different diseases that they do transmit are kind of housed in different parts of their body. Like some of them are in their mouth parts or their saliva glands, or some of them are in their gut. So it kind of depends upon the length of feeding and what they're carrying to determine that. So there's a lot of variability. That's why we do recommend, best practice, save it, put it in a little plastic bag with the date. I did this myself this year, May 2nd, behind the ear, and just in case something happens, it's easier to track down a problem that way than to be kind of a little unknown. So,
okay, good to know. We will have that link up on WDTN.com as well. Our next topic that we're going to address is one that I have been dealing with a ton. Well, we deal with ticks too, but talking about some of the diseases in the garden, especially when it comes to tomatoes. I've been watching my beautiful tomatoes. Their leaves kind of just are yellow and brown, and I figured out it probably is coming from the soil, these soil-borne diseases. Have no idea what one, but you're going to talk about several.
Yeah, there is a lot of soil-borne diseases that are particular or importance to tomatoes or their relatives. Their eggplants and peppers can also be affected by similar diseases. A lot of them are fungal. I was watering my garden this morning, and mine are looking exactly like what's being pictured. Sections are dying. Sections look like they're dying. But the good news, at this time of year, is that the sections that are dying tend to be kind of older foliage, and they still have plenty of healthy foliage. They're still producing tomatoes. They're still getting ripe, and it's just too late in the season really to be super worried about it right now. It's just kind of what happens. But a lot of them that are exhibiting some disease pressure would be from fusarium wilt or verticillium wilt. and those are two soil-borne diseases that can either come in the transplant material that you get from like a nursery or wherever your garden center where you buy them,
Okay.
or you could have them in the soil itself. And then, of course, you've transplanted it if it did come from a nursery.
Okay.
So really at this point right now, there's really nothing you can do to treat it.
Okay.
In fact, we talk about cultural measures, then really it's more for information for next year, what
Okay.
you can do next year to prevent it.
Do you need to spray? What are those options? Like, what can you do?
Yeah, there is no spray that will help.
Okay.
What you do next year is you practice crop rotation. So I see some pictures here on the screen of some raised beds. So what the recommendation is every 3 to 5 years. And a lot of times that's not feasible. But ideally, we would have enough space to be able to not put tomatoes in that same space for like 3, preferably 5 years. It gives the time for the disease cycle to break and put other crops in there, crops that are not related to it. So no eggplant, no peppers, no tomatoes in those same beds. But again, a lot of people's have gardens that are not that big to do that, and they still want their tomatoes, and I understand that. So in those cases, when you have this fungus in the soil, what you want to do is buy a tomato variety that has some resistance to that fungus.
Okay.
It's labeled right on the label, Fusarium, Verticillium wilt resistant. And that doesn't mean they're totally, that they can't get it, but that they are just shown a little bit more resistance. So I find that people are kind of tending towards a lot of heirloom varieties, and those are the ones that are a little bit more susceptible unless they're labeled that they're more resistant. So we like the heirlooms for the history and
they're so pretty, right?
Yeah, they're pretty, the simplicity of them, but there's a reason that we have modern varieties because of things like this and improvements in genetics and things. So,
now, I've always heard, does when you water it make a difference? Can you become more susceptible if you're like watering at night? Are things, what are some little tricks like that you need to consider?
Absolutely. We always would like ideal watering to happen in the early morning.
Okay.
A lot of these travel from their splashback from the soil onto the stem or the leaves, transmits the fungus that way. So we really want to water at the soil line. Overhead waters are not recommended.
Okay.
We recommend watering at the soil line. You don't even have to get the plant wet because you're wanting it to get into the roots.
Okay.
So we want to do it on the soil, and we really would like to do that in the morning. That way it has all day to dry, the leaves to dry. The next best time, just really all morning.
What hours are we talking between?
I was watering at 6:30 this morning, so
Okay.
but that's just the time that I had.
Okay.
So really before the heat of the day,
Okay.
we want to make sure we have a sufficient time for those leaves to dry.
Gotcha. And then obviously we're going to be getting rain, so you still are probably going to get some with a summer like we've had with all of this rain and just, downpours. That's, I assume, aggravating the problem.
Oh, absolutely. We can't really, get away without getting some rain probably, and certainly more this summer than in what I remember lately.
Yeah. Does mulching help with any of that splashback? That was what we were trying with the straw there. And I don't know if it helped or hurt, but that was our one of the tips that we had read.
Theoretically, mulching can help because it would reduce the amount of soil that is splashed back by a rain event. It also holds in moisture, so that's helpful, especially in raised beds when you have they drain really well. So, of course, they need a little bit more water than something's in the ground. So mulching doesn't hurt or really maybe help as far as disease. It's just kind of for maybe other purposes.
Okay. Straw mulch, leaf mulch. What's your best option when you're mulching in these raised beds?
Be really careful with leaf mulch that you know where it came from.
Okay.
Walnuts produce a toxin that is toxic to eggplant, peppers, and tomatoes. So if it has any kind of walnut leaves in it, or if you have a walnut tree anywhere near your garden, you're probably going to have problems with all of those species that I just mentioned. So be really careful about that. Also, if they have disease, the leaves have disease on them, they can kind of spread that as well.
Okay.
So, in general, they all come with their drawbacks, right? Straw has weed seed in them, and then you might have weeds.
Yeah.
And, but, a lot of times those benefits outweigh those drawbacks there.
All right. Amanda Bennett, OSU Extension Educator from Miami County. We're going to be back with you in just a second. We are going to take a quick break. And welcome back to Know to Grow. We are joined today by Amanda Bennett, OSU Extension Educator from Miami County, and we are talking gardening. And I know a lot of those summer crops are just kind of reaching the end of their life, but it's time to start thinking about fall and what we can plant kind of late season in our gardens. And you've got some ideas for us there.
Absolutely, yeah. If you still have some stamina for gardening left after the summer is past, there are definitely a lot of options that you can plant this fall yet. And by fall, we really do mean kind of in the next couple of weeks, and then maybe in the end of August. Planting varieties like spinach. Spinach is something that you can grow in the fall. It likes to germinate when it's cool, so that can be impacted by if we have a little bit of an Indian summer. It might not kind of grow as well, so we could kind of wait a little bit more towards the beginning of September, potentially. But that's a good crop. A lot of other greens too, things like kale. Some of maybe the Swiss chard varieties could also be some options. And really, we're looking for that, kind of what's that seed to harvest window.
Okay.
Somewhere, 30 to maybe 60 days. It's all very weather dependent. Probably a lot more comfortable with something that is around maybe 45 to 50 days if we can plant it in the end of August. But a lot of greens are really quick. Really quickly harvested, like 30 or so days. So a lot of lettuces and arugulas and things like that would make a nice little fall salad.
Yeah.
Radishes do really well.
Okay.
A lot of different varieties of radishes. Cherry bells and Easter globes all do really well in the fall for the fall planting. Sometimes you can get some carrots.
That's what I was going to ask. Are we too late for carrots? Can we get some of those? I've heard they're sweeter in the fall.
I have heard that. And then I've also planted them and then waited till spring to harvest them.
Oh, really? Just over winter? How's that worked out?
I'm always an experimenter.
Yeah.
So I just always do, something maybe just a little bit outside the box to see if it works. And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. But
So did you just pull them out whenever you'd want them, or you actually waited and did a full harvest at once in the spring?
I did a full harvest at once in the spring. Because carrots, they're just kind of so frustrating because you never know how big they are
Right?
until they look fine.
It's a
and then,
surprise.
yeah, you pull them out and they're just, like an inch big. So that's not good. But they're definitely worth a try. Low investment with seeds, right? Seeds are fairly cheap. Do get good quality seeds. But low investment in terms of, cost there.
Are we too late for green beans? Can we do like bush beans or anything right now?
Probably a little bit iffy on that.
Okay.
You might want to have planted those maybe a couple of weeks ago to try to get another harvest. But again, if you have some that are left over from your first planting, they're probably not going to do very well next year as far as if you keep the seed. So it might be worth putting out a couple plants and seeing what happens. That's always the thing. You never know what the fall weather is going to bring. Is it going to be warm into December, or is it going to be snow by Halloween?
I know we were talking like a few years ago. It was the year my daughter was born. It was like I thought I had planned pregnancy really well because I was going to be like 9 months pregnant going into November. It was still 90 degrees like the third week of October. So it's just, you never know in Ohio.
You don't.
It's just the way that it is. Garlic, I know, is something a lot of people are talking about, picking garlic varieties, and that is something we want to plant in the fall, right?
It is something you want to plant in the fall. Definitely a lot of different types of garlic that you can plant. They really do well in our Ohio soils, though, so it's a very good option for a fall planting. Something like your area, maybe where you've planted squash, or it's died by maybe the next thing that we're going to talk about, but or your green beans. You can utilize that area to then plant some garlic. What's really important for garlic, it doesn't compete well with weeds, so you really want to make sure that you do a good job of prepping the bed prior to planting, or you're going to really have them competing very much so with the weeds.
Okay, that's good. What do we want to do for prep? What's that look like?
You can do a chemical prep. You can do just weeding hand weeding as much as possible, getting everything out. Tilling can sometimes be bad and good. It turns up new weed seeds, but it gets rid of other weed seeds. So
Okay.
it's kind of a little bit, iffy. Mulching will also help, suppress some weeds. Um, and that's pretty much what you can do.
Okay, what varieties are we looking at to be good around here? I hear what soft neck and hard neck. What do we want
Yes.
in our zone?
There is some hard necks. They don't do as well in southern Ohio. So we're maybe at the northern Miami County. We're pretty good at be able to plant those. It produces fewer but larger cloves, so it kind of depends upon what you want at the end. But a couple of varieties of hardneck cultivars that do really good in Ohio are Music and Georgian Fire and Georgia Crystal are a couple of cultivars that are best suited for our area. The soft necks are kind of the classic choice. Some cultivars that do well there: Italian Late, Red Talk, Broadleaf Check. Where do they come up with these
I
names?
know,
Right?
fancy.
Yes, yes. And then there are something called elephant garlic. It's not really a true garlic though. It's more closely related to a leek.
Okay, interesting. And what are we talking about as far as like from when you plant to when you harvest? We're planting now and then not harvesting until spring. Is that right?
Right. We're planting now, and then we want to see a little bit of growth on it. A couple inches of growth would be ideal before the weather would get too poor to really shut it down there. Then they kind of lay dormant over the winter time, and they really start resuming their growth in the spring. We want that to happen. We can also get scapes. Have you ever had those garlic scapes?
Garlic scapes. You just trim the tops off. Is that right?
Yeah, those trimmings, they're basically seed heads in the late spring, and they're kind of unexpanded. You harvest them in the early season, and you prepare them just like you would like a green onion.
Oh, nice.
I see people trying to get rid of those all the time. Maybe it's who I'm friends with.
I do. I see the same things. I think the algorithm just knows us too well, right?
Probably so, yes. It is important to keep in mind that garlic is a heavy feeder, so you do want to fertilize it when you plant it. You want to fertilize it again in the spring when growth would start resuming. With a balanced fertilizer, you see those numbers on the fertilizer bags, like 12, 12, 12, something like that.
Okay.
To be able to kind of split those applications in the planting and then in the spring again.
Are we covering or mulching with anything over winter, or they just do fine hanging out?
They do fine hanging out. You can mulch. I think there's no problem with doing that, just even for like weed suppression and retention of moisture and things like that. So yeah, you can.
Okay. And then our last topic today, squash vine borers. They have been the bane of my existence this summer. I was so excited for my abundant zucchini harvest, and I really, they took out quite a few of my plants.
They can practically wipe it out overnight, can't they?
Yeah, they look gorgeous. Everything is full, and I was shocked. We walked outside and they were just on the ground.
Yeah, we have these squash vine borers that really start out, I guess, the life cycle, but they have, as an adult, they're a moth, and they have these clear wings. They look more like a wasp almost. We probably would never really see them or pay attention to them very much, but they lay eggs on the squash plants, and then as soon as those eggs hatch, they immediately tunnel into the stem, and they just basically eat it from the inside out. And at first you're like, oh, this needs water, or this needs fertilizer. It's kind of wilting, and no amount of fertilizer or water will save it.
I knew.
For sure.
I knew as soon as I went outside, because it was just like that. So I knew what it was. I just didn't know if there was anything I could do to save the rest of them. Is there any line of defense? What do you do here?
Really, there's not. The good thing is that there's only one generation in Ohio usually per year. Sometimes we can get a partial generation, particularly in the southern part of the state. But it's really too late. You can't rescue it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of information on the internet that seems to be very extreme and
Oh yeah, like surgery, right?
surgery. Yes, exactly. But the damage is done by that point. So
Yeah.
I have a feeling that would be a kind of a lost cause.
Okay.
I have a community garden in Troy that we donate all the produce to food banks and our pantries in the county. And we're trapping for squash vine borers. And
Oh.
it's been active. So it's
Okay.
part of a research program that we do across the state. And my site is just one of many, but just trying to really time or discover the timing and then what could maybe be done to prevent it. The problem is they go into the soil and pupate over the winter. So
Oh,
really,
great.
yeah, what we're looking at is like for next year, what we're
Okay.
looking at is maybe tilling your garden at
Yeah.
the end of the season to expose those
Okay.
pupated insects
All
so
right.
that we can kill them. Maybe they'll freeze to death, or they'll
Yeah.
a bird will have a nice lunch.
Okay.
That is one option, and then doing again crop rotation. We don't want to plant squash in the same place
place.
every year. It's
right.
disease, it's insect problems
All
galore.
right. Well, we will keep that in mind definitely as we head into fall. Amanda Bennett, OSU Extension Educator from Miami County. We want to thank you for being with us today, and we will chat with you again hopefully in a few weeks. So
Thanks.
thank you again for your time.